Good morning, members. We have a quorum. I call the meeting to order. There is only one item on the agenda. It is issues relating to the promotion of animal-friendly measures, including public rental housing, public transport, and public open space. We have with us 18 deputations to attend the hearing. We also have with us representatives of the Food and Health Bureau. Let's invite the administration to come in to join us. And please also ask the deputations and individuals to come in as well. We have with us Mr. Bill Wong, Principal Assistant Secretary for Food and Health, and also Ms. Swing Yao, Assistant Secretary. From the Housing Department, Mr. Ng Shu Chung, Chief Manager, Manager Support Service 2. Also from the Housing Department, Ms. Chang Yi Ling, Senior Housing Manager. Ms. Carol Zhang, Principal Transport Officer from the Transport Department, is here with us as well. I also welcome deputations. There is an ambassador. This is a Labrador. Labrador is a very famous fisherman dog in Canada. I used to have 2. First of all, I ask the PAS, Mr. Wong, from the Food and Health Bureau to present the paper. Good morning, Chairman. Thank you for inviting us to this meeting. This is the subcommittee to study issues relating to animal rights. On a number of occasions previously, we have discussed many different issues. Today, we have seen many submissions from different deputations. Some of the topics have already been discussed in previous meetings. Today, we will focus on 3 areas, namely public housing, public rental housing, public transport, and public open space in relation to promotion of animal-friendly measures. Let me reiterate again, it is the government's policy to implement animal-friendly measures, but we have to strike a balance between the well-being of people and the welfare of animals in a pragmatic way. We need to ensure that animals and people coexist in a harmonious way in Hong Kong. We also asked the Housing Department to come to explain about policies under their purview and also answer questions as well. I am not going to explain about the specific issues stated in the paper. You'll find a lot of information in the paper explaining our position in relation to keeping of dogs in public rental housing. It sets out the background surveys done by the Housing Department and also under public transport, how the MTRCL and other public transport deal with animal traveling on public transport. It also contains information about access by pets to public open space. Thank you. Well, I got it wrong. Well, it was not 18 deputations, but 18 plus 1. It's a guide dog. do we need to give it water? We have a container to give it water. What's the name? Toffee. So I welcome 18 deputations and toffee. Let me remind you that you may use the earpiece in front of you. Channel 0 is the floor, 1 is Cantonese, 2 is English, and 3 is Putonghua. Let me remind you that what you say here is not protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance Cap 382. That applies to the submissions you give us as well, the written submission. There is also a notice to persons attending public hearing. It will be in front of you. If you don't have any, you may get a copy from the security guard. There are 18 deputations and individuals speaking. Each will have 3 minutes. If we have time left, then I will open the floor for members to ask questions. If there is still time left, deputations may ask questions. First, let's hear from Ms. Mak Suk Jing. Good morning, everyone. Well, in relation to promotion of animal-friendly measures, including public rental housing, public transport, and public open space, I do think the most important point is for the administration to show support and to change its attitude towards animals. The impression we get from the government is that they are more afraid than the members of the public. When animals appear in the community, then they would overreact. If the government would take the lead to tell members of the public that there is no need to afraid, I'm sure that there will be a change in attitude. I thank departments for coming here today, but I urge them not to do what they have always been doing. That is, to listen to us and think you have done something. The most important thing is to put it in place. So you have collected our submissions, you have heard our view. You should move on from not having any idea, because that will be undesirable. Without the government taking the lead to change its attitude and to take up education, it will not be a good idea. It's not the case that we haven't seen any effort on public education. It's just that nothing concrete has been done. I hope that they would do more for animals who can't speak. Don't just sit there and think, put it into action. Next is Ms. Zhang Yunmen. Hello, I am from Animal World. Well, we have a submission. Well, I would like to supplement something that is already on paper. First, in relation to keeping animals in public rental housing, in the administration paper, for NT Northeast, there will be a major development. Apart from human beings, there will be about 2,000 cats and dogs. They have been living in the village. They are not pets. They are not feral either. They belong to the village. Villagers may be resettled. They might be given a public housing estate. However, they are not able to bring the dog with them because of the public housing policy. Well, these villagers do not apply to get a housing to get a PRH unit themselves. They are forced to go there. So they should be allowed to bring their dogs and cats with them because they're forced to move in there. And these are village dogs and cats, so they don't necessarily belong to a particular person. They are indigenous villagers. So relevant departments, say the housing department, can they do something about it and not treat them like feral cats and dogs and ask the AFCD to catch them? There will be a lot of construction site in the development so what about safety of these cats and dogs? Can there be instructions given to persons in charge of construction site to make sure that there are no cats and dogs being hoarded up but when they hoard up the area of the construction site? My second point is public housing, public transport. So what I think, the first thing that comes into my mind will be buses and MTRs. We have heard from time to time cows and oxen and also dogs being knocked down. There should be clear signage where there is a frequent appearance of, say, oxen, to remind drivers that they should slow down and exercise caution. Third area, allowing pets to access public open space. This is the subcommittee for animal welfare. Actually, LCSD gardens don't allow the desexing of cats program to take place in their garden, so they don't allow at parks. They don't allow desexed cats to be released in LCSD parks, and I think something should be done in that regard. Thank you. Next is Ms. Ho Pui Han. I would like to say that there are oxen in the community, and they used to rest in the village and the rural area they live in. However, nowadays they are being displaced and they can't even find a place to rest or have a drink of water. Very few people will think about allocating space for cows and oxen in the rural area, but they are community animal. They have been roaming there for a very long time, but now they've been turned into plaza.
With cattle, they might complain about cattle droppings and so on, and fences were set up. But as community animals, have they considered that our cattle also needs shelter, and at times of rain and wind, the only park for them was gone, and the cows were exposed to bad weather. So hopefully in the future, cattle parks can be introduced. We don't need very big parks. They just need some space for shelter. And some spaces are suitable for cattle, for certain turfs. Some plants might be planted and they are no longer suitable for cows, and then they have to the cows have to move to somewhere with grass they can graze on. So we are talking about animals that have lived with humankind for thousands of years. At Mui Wo, well, the cows know how to turn on the tap, which is amazing. And a pit was created for them, and the streams also changed. And I saw cows drinking seawater. So people thought cows are very smart since they can turn on the taps, but this is actually a tragedy. and their original water sources were affected without considering the cows. The cows need water and they need to feed on grass. So as they go in search of water, a lot of facilities are locked. So you can imagine what would happen if the cows have no water. Some villages would place basins of water for the cows, but this is not getting to the root of the problem. So can the government be more generous towards these animals so they can continue to survive? Thank you. Mr. Lokachit, he's not here. Ms. To Pui Ching, I don't know how to turn on the mic. Just speak to the microphone. I'm from the Saikong Subse Hang Village Cattle Concern Group. Subse Hang is overdeveloped at the moment, and there will be a major development. The village cattle has been there for over 50 years, and we don't know what will happen with the cows under the current development. We understand that development is inevitable, but we should allow the cows to survive as well. You should have facilities like parks and passages. The villagers at Shapsehang love these animals, or else they would live in the city instead. And it's a joy to see these animals. There should be animal-friendly access. For example, you should have wider passages, and there should be grass on both sides of the passages. You should not block everything or cover everything with concrete. Cows have been living with us for decades in the area, and we have built very close bonds with them. All right. Ms. Tong Fei Fei. Good morning. This is the first time I'm here at this meeting. Ms. Claudia Mo invited me to this meeting. Since I moved to the rural areas, and I often encountered cows when I went out with my dogs, and I find the cows very cute and interesting. They have been here for generations. I thought the two cows looked very thin. There was a cycling track nearby, and during the renovation of the track, the grass was damaged, and so the grass were substandard for the cows. That's why they grew so thin. I realized that the new soil could not nurture the grass, so it's impossible to grow good grass on that kind of soil. So the cows have no grass to graze on. So how can they survive? So I have a very big question mark. Hong Kong is very developed. So why can't we be friendlier or more civilized towards animals? As humankind develops, we are turning the habitats of cows into our own habitats. So how can the cows survive? I realize that most people only care about cats and dogs, and few of them worry about cows. So the cows in Hong Kong are facing great difficulties. Whenever I visit Chongqing, well, I sigh because the cows are very thin. They have nothing to graze on. I don't know how I can help, but I cannot allow this to go on. Since 2013, the AFCD reprovisioned the cows there, and many cows were moved and many of them died, and there should be records. We have to face up to the issue. We cannot allow this to continue. The governments must stop moving the cows there. They would starve to death. This is really sad for me. Now, I used to help cats and dogs, and I now want to help the cows as well. Thank you. Ms. Fiona Woodhouse.
Many people in Hong Kong are greatly interested in animals, their protection and well-being, and truly expect Hong Kong to be as animal-friendly as possible. There are many aspects of Hong Kong that could and should be improved in terms of animal friendliness. Many of these improvements would have a positive impact on the welfare of animals. Others would positively impact the lives of pet owners. Taking the example of dog ownership, there are many aspects of Hong Kong life that are not especially dog or dog owner friendly. Your local park may not be dog or dog owner friendly, and you may have to travel a significant distance to the nearest one. Travelling around Hong Kong with your dog is a challenge, as they are not allowed on most forms of public transport. And if when you arrive at your destination with your dog you wish to relax and eat or drink something, you may find your options limited. Finding dog friendly housing can be challenging in Hong Kong. Unfortunately, many of the barriers to animal friendliness rise from the policy positions of the government departments in charge. For instance, the Housing Department adopts the general policy position that dog keeping in public housing should not be permitted, even though it is not banned, and there are mechanisms in place to manage it. I should point out that housing not allowing dog ownership is still a major cause of forced dog abandonment. LCSD has adopted a similar management approach to general pet access to public open space, with limited facilities allowing pet access. Other barriers, such as not being able to take your dog onto restaurant premises, may result from legislation that does not have the flexibility to be applied on an individual risk basis. Hong Kong should adopt an animal-friendly policy following examples from around the world. For instance, where dog ownership is permitted in social housing, animals are allowed on public transport and in certain parts of restaurants, and pet owner access to public owner space is permitted in general rather than in exceptional cases. Animal friendliness should be a consideration in terms of sustainable development and strategic planning. Animal-friendly features should be incorporated and potential barriers removed or avoided. Facility and infrastructure design should be guided such that animal-unfriendly unintended consequences that could negatively impact animals, such as poorly designed water drainage channels and metal fencing where animals may become trapped, are avoided. Government departments need to work closely together across departments and bureaus to ensure that policy positions are changed and barriers are removed, and that where law is an issue, there is collaboration to change the legislation to be more flexible. Responsibilities need to be recognised and accepted, stakeholders need to be engaged, and resources need to be allocated as required, with priorities and timelines agreed and set. To support developing a more animal-friendly approach in Hong Kong, education on animals and animal welfare needs to be mainstreamed in the education system. This should be supported by community engagement and education, with the aim of raising awareness and increasing understanding and acceptance of animal-friendly measures. To ensure that an animal-friendly policy is inculcated into the fabric of Hong Kong, its administration and policies, it needs to be promoted and adopted at the highest level of government. Animal welfare needs to be raised up Hong Kong's agenda. There needs to be quicker progress on this.
Thank you very much. Next, Mr. Tran Wai Wai. Good morning. I'm the chairman of the Hong Kong Seeing Eye Dog Services. My name is Tran Wai Wai. Hong Kong is a harmonious and inclusive society, and everyone should enjoy equal rights. HKSEDS is a government-approved authority, and we provide free guide dog services for the visually challenged. And the visually challenged can dodge obstacles and arrive at their destination safely. They can also become more independent and sociable. So this is all thanks to training. After guide dog puppies are trained, they would be well equipped to help the visually handicapped. There are three main parts to training. First of all, home training. The puppies will learn to live with humans, and 2, socialization. They have to learn the social environment and facilities, and 3, guiding training. They would learn how to guide the visually handicapped around obstacles and use public facilities. And the visually handicapped would use public transport, restaurants, shopping malls, as well as their homes. The most significant challenges right now include the banning of dogs at buildings under the ambit of the housing department, and as such, their families cannot accept guide dogs on a boarding basis, and this would affect the care given to puppies and would affect the progress of home training. A lot of frontline workers reject guide dogs, and that's why the boarding family and trainers are rejected from the facilities. Over the past few years, we held more than 800 talks, and the Labor and Welfare Bureau also announced an API at the end of last year, and together with media coverage, the public is gradually starting to accept guide dogs in training. Trained guide dogs can enhance the capability of the visually handicaps and expand their social circles, and they are also soulmates for the visually handicapped. Without legal protection, the training of guide dog puppies cannot go ahead, and the services to visually handicapped will be affected. That's why we urge support from legislators in promoting the government's guide dog services, including establishing legal status for guide dogs in training. Thank you.
Next is Mr. Wang Gake. Thank you. Well, a civilized society should put a priority on respecting lives. Hong Kong is an international metropolis. Of course, we are no exception. However, in the protection of animals, Hong Kong has lagged behind compared to our surrounding cities and areas. Very often we refer to some data between 2005 and 2011. It has changed to 290 to 410,000, so an increase of 40% over just 5 years. Now, in 2017, does the government keep any data about how many animals are kept in Hong Kong? Has the policy changed to keep in line with the change in time? Every year, the AFCD put down thousands of animals, and don't just criticize the department. These animals are abandoned by their owners. So I asked the administration to introduce a penalty. Every year, there are about 300 cases of neglecting cats and dogs. However, the average cost is 1,200. It's 300 less than the fixed penalty ticket. In Singapore, you will face a 63,000 Hong Kong dollars penalty. In Germany, if you abandon or neglect an animal, once convicted, you may have to pay 240,000 Hong Kong dollars as penalty, and also imprisonment of several months. The Liberal Party asked the government to increase the number of pet gardens. Currently, there are over 40, but some of them are rather lacking in facilities. I keep dogs. In some of the pet gardens, it's so hot that in an unsheltered area, animals won't survive there. So will you introduce facilities, say some kind of a sprinkler system to cool down animals, so that the parks will be properly used? And I would like to speak about pet food. So far, there is no comprehensive framework to control pet food. According to a case studied by the Consumer Council, they found that in one case that one product, which is a dog food, it just beef flavor with no content of beef whatsoever. It's misleading, and the C&E department should take action. In the U.S., when it comes to regulation of pet food, it's done by the FDA, the Food and Drugs Administration. So there are stringent regulations and requirements when it comes to content and label. We hope that in Hong Kong a similar approach will be taken so that safe pet food and healthy pet food will be available to customers. Thank you. Next, Ms. Joan Lai. Good morning. Well, the government gave us a paper. It says that is the government's their objective to ensure that animals and people coexist in a harmonious way. However, I think that in reality it's not happening. In the paper it says that apart from guide dogs, PRH estates don't welcome animals or dogs, and the same goes for PRH estates. Guide dogs work for human beings, so the decision is taken from the perspective of human beings. Well, the government has been using the excuse of dogs opposing environmental hygiene. And I think that is down to the owner, not the dog. If the owner has a poor character, we don't need a dog to cause environmental problems, say for example spitting and littering. The government said that dogs will bite. I would like to hear from the government how many cases there are of every year when dogs bite people. And it also says that in a survey, 70% of PRH tenants opposed to it. They have interviewed 5,000 households, which is less than 1% of the 730,000 PRH tenants in Hong Kong. Can they elaborate on this survey? Well, now I move on to public transport. Owners often complain that it's difficult to take their pets out. Has the government considered the benefits of different stakeholders? Say, for example, well, for large animals, that they should be kept on a leash, and there should be a nuzzle, and there can be some kind of rules put in place. I have a friend who keeps a pet, and she lives on an island. But in the middle of the night, when there is a need for her to find a vet, there is no way for her to seek medical attention. Now, public space. I find that there is no LCSD representative here to attend this meeting about public open space. Most of the public open space under the LCSD will stop animals from entering, and they don't allow voluntary workers to release the desexed animals into their gardens, and they would rather ask the AFCD to go and catch animals. So is it the case that the government only talks and there won't be any action? Thank you, Ms. Joan. We have liaised with the LCSD through the Secretariat and my personal assistant, asking them to attend. The manager responsible insisted that they would not attend this meeting. The subcommittee would lodge a complaint with that person's superior. Next, Mr. Chak Ji Chiu. Good morning. I would like to first talk about Hong Kong's housing policy when it comes to animal friendly. Do we still have any expectations? We've been talking about this topic for many years. We express our views. They listened, but they did not hear us. So what's the point of talking to them? I have 3 proposals. First, for newly constructed PRH units and also HOS flats, dogs should be allowed. Some dogs are abandoned because people move to an apartment. They abandon their dogs because they think they can't keep their dogs in the new home. So is it the government that indirectly caused abandonment? Previously, we asked whether newly constructed PRH and HOS developments will allow keeping of dogs, but there was no answer. And we also made proposals of PRH unit doctors or ambassadors. If one keeps a dog in a PRH unit, the dog and the owner should register, and they should also attend lessons. Well, perhaps exemptions can be given to adoption of retired police dogs or guide dogs. Now I move on to public transport. Well, there has been a suggestion that MTR should allow dogs and cats to ride the train. However, they said no. They said that they can't allocate a separate corridor for dogs and cats, and trains are quite packed. So allowing dogs and cats to ride the train will cause inconvenience. Well, I have two suggestions. There can be a pilot basis for designated routes for pets to use. It can lead directly to the last car of the train. There can also be a pets allowed car, a portion of it allocated to pets in the last car of every train. At the beginning, it should start at no less than 30% of it, and cats and dogs can be put on a leash, put in a pet carrier or something along that line. Thank you. This will be dealt with. I think there is a motion submitted. Next is Mr. Lam Junman. Well, I actually speak for puppy dogs at home. First, I would like to talk about keeping of animals in public rental housing. The Housing Department has been talking about data. In June, we have conducted a survey, 1,900. 62% of the respondents, 45% of them lives in PRH, 70% of them is of a household between 2 and 4 persons. So it is in line with our demographic. Out of 1,900 respondents, only 10 of them, that is 0.5% of the respondents, support no keeping of animals in PRH housing. That means 99.5% of them support keeping of animals. The government's trying to make more land for people to live in, but what about those for dogs? The AFCD said that they will catch all feral dogs to be put down. Some voluntary workers will try to save the dogs. Well, it seems that all accommodations are for humans only and no dogs, and public transportation apart from taxis do not allow dogs, and restaurants, most of them do not allow dogs. Well, actually, living space, transportation, parks should all be shared by people and animals. People should not be so selfish. They should not just think of themselves and try to stifle the room of survival of dogs and cats. people who don't like dogs always say that they are afraid, and when they hear dog barks, they said they are scared, and they say that there are dogs droppings everywhere. Well, I do think that they need to be educated. When it comes to our public policy, is it fair to our dogs? Well, they don't even have a place to live. Let's look at other countries. In the European countries, they have very welcoming policies when it comes to dogs, much better than in Hong Kong. And I think if you open your mind, you will be able to come up with a lot better policies. Well, if you want to adopt a pet, you should get training, you should get a license, and when will all these suggestions be implemented? Mr. Lam, you mentioned about a survey. We haven't received it. We're still trying to find it. I emailed it to you this morning. It's about 9 or so. Okay, thank you. Next. Mr. Ling Yi. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Cat Society, I come to speak. Current PRH policy allow desex cats to be kept in households. Because of the temperament of cats, Cat Society don't encourage owners and voluntary workers to take cats into the open area to avoid accidents. So we would like to speak on the area of public transport. A lot of points have been covered by others. If owners and voluntary workers would like to take the animals out, they can only choose taxis or ferries. The government should consider striking a balance between the needs of those with pets and those without. Say, for example, in non-peak hours, people can carry the animals in a container. In the pet carriers of a certain size. And I will also suggest that in public buses, perhaps the animals should be kept in a bag or some kind of pet carrier, so as not to scare the animal, and it also address the issue of environmental hygiene.
We also suggest the MTR to designate a pet-friendly compartment, and at designated hours, owners would be allowed to take their pets in carriers. This would provide convenience to volunteers and owners, and it can also allow passengers to choose whether they want to be in the same compartment as animals. Apart from these measures on public transport, we hope the government will follow up and implement other animal policies, including the CAP 169, the Ordinance Against Cruelty to Animals, and implement the implant schemes for cats, etc. Thank you. Next. Ms. Lam Ho Yi. I'm from Paul's Hero, and I hope the government would listen to our recommendations and improve the current situation. The laws do not allow dogs to visit all parks. They can only visit one of the 40 designated pet gardens, and there are only 2.3 facilities in each district. For South District, Wong Tai Sin or Sha Tin, there's only one pet garden is available. So the government should tackle the lack of pet gardens. When considering how many pet gardens to build, they have to consider the population demographics. In the Central and Western District, there's a pet garden every 60,000 people, but at Sha Tin, the there's only one pet garden every 660,000. For districts like Wan Chai, they might be smaller than Sha Tin, but there's no need for so many pet gardens. We visited the only pet garden in Wan Chai, and we detected two problems. First of all, it's extremely inaccessible. It's near Tai Hang Road and Shun Fai Road. From Wan Chai MTR station, you have to spend more than an hour. And you have to use the slope. Even for those living in Bremer Hill or other places, they would not take their dogs there. Even residents in the area would not visit that garden because it's way too small. And the LCSC website says the area is only 96 square meters. And it would be difficult for dogs to run around there. If with 5 owners and dogs there, they won't even have space to move. So the government must tackle that. So the government must build more pet gardens. In Sha Tin, there's only one pet garden in Ma On Shan. The government should look at places like Shek Mun and Fo Tan. They should identify suitable spaces and try to work with the easier locations first. And with a few sinks and dog latrines, the facilities can be made available to owners for areas like Southern Stadium and the underground space at Kowloon Park. The government should identify space for pet gardens. This would minimize opposition and provide more facilities to more people. Ms. Leung Siwa. Apparently, people care about cattle, dogs, or buffaloes. I live in Lantau, and I've been taking care of buffaloes for a long time, and dogs are not welcome to enter beaches because the dogs will scare away the buffaloes. So the LCC is always complaining. They always ask the AFCD to capture the buffaloes or cows. When you talk about public rental estates at Mui Wo, there are public estates as well. The security staff would get paranoid whenever they see a cow or buffalo entering the playground, and they would call me at midnight. I think this is outrageous. You know, I agree with Ms. Mack. Why the fuss? So it's natural to see buffaloes and cows in Lantau Island, and you only had housing. You only built your housing estate, but you did not accommodate them. There's a cycling track, and they evicted all the trees, and they widened the passages. So the 5 buffaloes I kept had nowhere to go. And whenever they crossed the line, they were seriously injured. I had to rescue the buffaloes at 9 in the morning. So the government had no consideration of the indigenous plants needed by these indigenous animals. This is stupid. A lot of cows were run over, and they refused to improve the roads even by a little bit. And I'm only here because I thought the LCSD or the AFCD is here, but they were not here, so I'm very disappointed. Whenever in future developments, they should consider these indigenous animals, which we love so dearly, and we hope that our future generations can still see these animals. Why are you driving them away? If you remove all the plants, well, they will have nothing else to eat. I cannot feed all these animals by myself. The so-called government officials are all idiots. They did not even spend a second thinking about these animals. So in the future developments, you should come up with assessment reports on these indigenous animals and incorporate them into your plans. That's how you can allow them to survive, and we would appreciate that. I think there's no need to call the officials idiots, because there's a lot of controversy on animal issues. Well, I'm asking them to stop, but they refuse until they evicted the entire country park. So my buffaloes had to look around for food. We understand your situation. That's why we need this subcommittee. So that's why I'm grateful to see the setting up of this subcommittee as well. Thank you. Ms. Claudia Mo is also to thank for. Well, you had a role in this, and with my support, we are able to achieve this. Ms. Hokami. I also want to talk about the cattle in NT East. I want to share this photograph with you. It's a real picture of our cows, and this ox brought his children to the valley. The cows are very well behaving. That's why I would also be very organized in my presentation. I will talk about my background questions and my recommendations. First of all, the background. Cows are very important to our community. They are part of us. These photos show how villagers love the cows. We don't treat them as pets, and they love us back. But this is not about feeding them or hugging them. This is another kind of love. This lovely cow, unfortunately, he was hit by a car on the 19th of May, and according to the witness, the taxi did not stop. I have with me some letters written by villagers. They felt extremely sad at the incident. I won't read them out. According to unofficial statistics, we have hundreds of cows at Subse Hung, but they are all in their habitats. Those who have visited Sai Kung often see cows, but they don't often come out. Now, I'd like to move on to the problem itself. This photograph shows their habitat, and there's a narrow passage leading to the habitat. And this is for hikers and cyclists, but in 2015, the passage was locked, so the cows could not enter their habitats anymore. So they have to go on the footpaths. That's why people wondered why there are cows on this path. The villagers or residents would not complain, but the tourists will. Now, the problem of speeding with speeding vehicles, sometimes the cows would graze on the roadside, and sometimes the dogs will chase the young cattle. And so I have two recommendations. First of all, in terms of hardware, law enforcement should be enhanced, and LED displays should be put up at the town center. In terms of software, more education should be done. Thank you very much. Have all attending deputations spoken? If so, can we invite the administration to give us an overall response, please? Please be specific about the concerns raised by deputations. Mr. Bill Wong. I'd like to thank the deputations for being here. In a moment, I will ask the Housing Department and Transport Department to talk about dog keeping in public rental estates and the conveyance on animals on public transport. The LCSD is not here today, so I would offer some information on their behalf. We talked about parks managed by the LCSD. For specific follow-up requests for the LCSD, we would relay them. In terms of pet gardens, the government is planning a few new pet gardens this year. In the past few years, we have seen many more pet gardens. Of course, the locations and facilities are different in different districts. And there are new pet gardens in the pipeline in rural areas, including Yaoqing, Shanshoupo, Central and Western District, etc. So new gardens will be introduced in certain districts. As for stray cattle, it has been covered in earlier panel meetings, and legislators have visited this. They have visited Chongqing. I can say that in terms of managing stray cattle, the AFCD has enhanced its measures. The trap neuter release scheme has been in place for quite some time, and we have assessed with the AFCD, and we find the arrangement suitable, and there's enough food for the cattle. Some legislators have made a visit, and you could see that it was in good condition, and the cows were in good shape. So we will keep tabs on the situation and continue with this program.
When it comes to other issues, cruelty to animals ordinance. A few months ago, there was a detailed discussion in this subcommittee. We explained Hong Kong's situation when it comes to the maximum penalty, and also definition of cruelty to animals were comparable to overseas jurisdictions. We'll monitor the situation, and if necessary, we will take follow-up action. A deputation mentioned about latest situation of animals in Hong Kong. In 2011, there was a comprehensive household survey done by the Census and Statistics Department. In the right time, we will conduct surveys. We will go back to look into it. I'll now first ask the Housing Department to reply about keeping of animals in PRH estates. I would ask you to directly answer to questions and points raised by the deputation. Do not repeat the current policy saying that you can't do this, you can't do that. I will give a brief reply to points raised. Well, when the applicant's previous home is cleared, whether the applicant can take the dog with them. Well, we have a policy. We want to ensure environmental hygiene. I'm not going to elaborate on that. As you understand, public housing is limited and is precious resources. It's to provide accommodation to those in need. So we have to be fair and impartial when it comes to allocation. Allocation of PRH units is done by random. And all tenants are subject to the same terms. So, however the tenants obtain the PRH unit, whether it's from clearance or not, they are subject to the same treatment in relation to keeping of animals. So they have to follow the prevailing policy of the housing department. In short, everyone's treated equally. For someone whose home has been cleared, and if they would like to take their animal with them to live in a PRH unit under our current policy, that is not allowed. And I would like to reply to Mr. Tran Wai Wai about guide dog puppies. He mentioned about giving them more opportunity. We have obtained some information. We are conducting a study. We don't have the information sought, but we will keep in communication with Mr. Zhang. Ms. Zhang mentioned about 70% of respondents opposing to it. That is from the Housing Department's annual survey. We asked the Hong Kong U to conduct the survey, and it's more or less the same as other surveys. There are no leading questions. It's just to ask whether you support relaxation of keeping of animals. The proposal to allow keeping of animals in newly constructed PRH estates. My reply is the same to the one I gave to Ms. Zhang Yunman. Allocation is fair and impartial, so everyone's subject to the same terms and conditions. That's all. So can we hear about public transport? I thank you all for their understanding that we have a very high utilization rate of public transportation, especially during peak hours. Mr. Cheung, that is the Guide Dog Society. Basically, all public transport allowed, guide dogs. Maybe an individual has a stronger reaction. Will continue to appeal to operators to support this. I take tunnel buses quite a lot, and recently I see some trainers taking guide dogs on board of buses, passengers accept that, and they even move to one side for the guide dog. And I see that there is a marked improvement in the attitude of members of the public towards guide dogs. Ms. Joan Lai mentioned about having to take animals from islands to the urban area to seek medical attention. Well, most ferry routes allow animals on board. It's just that there is one route. It's Tai O Shallow Wan. The vessel is smaller. That's why animals are not allowed. For the other lines, for the other ferry services, animals are allowed. Some people mention about pilot schemes and designated cars, and that involves the use of public transportation resources. we will keep in view members of the public, views of the public. We have to be very cautious when it comes to the use of public resources. I hope that you will ask public transport operators, especially MTRCL, to put in place pilot schemes to allow animals to ride the train outside peak hours, maybe in the first or the last cars. Not everyone can afford taking taxis everywhere. I think all the questions are answered. Now I open the floor for members to ask questions. Before that, I would like to say that we have received 2 motions. I accept that they are related to today's topic. I asked the Secretariat to amend it for you because both of movers has omitted the word subcommittee, the word sub. Perhaps we will deal with these motions at the end. You have all received the 2 motions. If you haven't, please ask for a copy from a staff member. For members, first round, Claudia Mo, Nathan Law, Ray Chan, Edward Lau, Jeremy Tam, Roy Kwong. Ms. Mo, 3 minutes for now. The biggest problem when it comes to animals is very well put by Ms. Mak Suk Jing. She said that some people overreact when it comes to animals. So when it comes to cows, pigs, they are animals, and people overreact. But when it comes to cats and dogs, they are pets. They are different. They are more precious. The government kept saying pets, pets, pets. And we beg the MTRCL to just use 1 car of each train to allow pets to ride the train, so that owners can take their animals to seek medical attention. The MTRCL said that there is no non-peak for our services. Well, there is a very good policy of the housing department. Generally, they do not allow keeping of animals, but if its companion animal, you can apply for an exemption, and I've dealt with a number of cases and they have been approved, and I thank the housing department for being so reasonable. Well, if there are only 1% of the people who are surveyed, I do think the number is a bit small. I do not find palatable that from the FHB they have already talked about the policies on cow. They are not going to repeat it. I would give my time to Miss Mac. Well, they talk about the cows in Chongqing. You can ask more. You can speak and ask more questions. Can I? Yes. I think you can ask questions and deputation can answer. I would like to ask the FHB. Well, now you have the trap or replacement or move, neuter, release. So you move them to Chongqing. Does it mean that all village cows, when once trapped, will be released in Chongqing? And if there is space for in the community for the cows to live in, will you still move them? And if the answer is yes, that means you are the decision maker where cows should live. You have deprived an animal that has been the loyal companion of human beings, and you try to change their fate. And if your answer is positive, I will always be chasing you for an answer. We are on a tight schedule. Perhaps in your concluding reply, you will reply to what Ms. Ho said. Next, Mr. Nathan Law. Thank you. We see bureaucracy written all over their policies. They rather not do something so as not to make a mistake, say, for example, street sleepers. As a result, we can't catch up with the international trend, and then our policy inadequacies are not addressed. Now we're here to talk about 3 areas. The government's paper is just like those before. They are afraid of complaints. It's not scientific at all. It's not supported by data. So it's very difficult for us to decide whether there is consensus or whether it's mainstream view. Paragraph 6. Finally, we see some figures. And it says that, in the 2011 and 2016 public housing recurrent survey, 60 and 70% of those interviewed support the implementation of no keeping of dogs in PRH units. I found the information in the survey. Your exact wording was what? Find it and tell me. You would like to hear from the Housing Department, from Ms. Ng or from Mr. Ng or from Mr. Wong. What is the exact wording used? Mr. Ng. Do you think the Housing Department should relax the restriction of keeping of dogs in public housing? I would like to see the paper again, because there are no questions on the internet. So please give me the information.
I'm not sure if the papers online were incomplete, and at an earlier meeting, such statistics were not provided. So hopefully you can offer more information after the meeting. The government has been talking about containing pollution and emissions. Right now, animals cannot board public transport, and this is against the government's principles or what they are advocating. The official said public transport in Hong Kong is heavily used, but there's already a recommendation to establish animal passage or an animal-friendly compartment during non-busy hours. So I'd like you to explain why you cannot do that. Thank you very much. This is a matter of public resources. If you incorporate pet-friendly compartments in public transport, some passengers might be affected. For each route, especially on our railways, we really need to look at the specific routes and hours. You can see that the demand is quite high for certain services during weekdays and weekends. The deputations have said very clearly that they do not want to kick away other passengers, because passengers have a choice. If they do not mind, they can stay in the same public transport. So I do not understand why you quote this reason that public resources would be jeopardized. Well, he's right on this. Hopefully the Transport Department can consider that. And in metros around the world, there are special compartments for cats and dogs, even though they might not welcome cows, but cats and dogs should be welcomed. Next, Mr. Ray Chen. I think the subcommittee should condemn LCSD for not sending any representative for the three issues we are discussing today: public rental, housing, public transport, and public open space. Public open space is under the ambit of LCSD. They should send a representative and provide information. We deceived the deputations because we are unable to summon LCSD. Some deputations talked about the desexing program for stray cats, and the AFCD or the LCSD should face up to that. I'd like to talk about the keeping on dogs in public rental estate. According to paragraph 4, it says, as dog biting incidents were reported from time to time. I think this is really irresponsible. You are creating conflict between humans and animals. You are creating the impression that animals would bite. So you should give us some figures. You have to give us some statistics on the so-called dog biting incidents. The government said they conducted a survey on whether dogs should be kept. They simply asked a single question. So we are going to move a motion today. You asked whether guide dog puppies will be allowed to public rental estates. The answers might be very different. If you ask whether adopted animals should be adopted at public rental estates, and the answers might be different. Can you introduce pilot schemes at new development areas to partially open up certain estates to pets? So if the residents knew about it beforehand, the opposition might not be as strong. Can you consider these? Mr. Wong? First of all, the dog biting incidents. We read about these dog biting incidents on the news. They were reported. Well, we had news clippings. Please go on. And as for whether guide dog puppies would be allowed or other recommendations, we have heard you, and we would look at that later. I think you better make things clear. We are not looking at a lot of households. For example, maybe 2 or 3 households in each estate. I think you should be clear in your messages. Well, there's no. You shouldn't use up all our time. You know, time is limited. Well, it's about your attitude. You always scold me. Well, this is a criticism. Well, you're at it again. Well, we are all working towards the same goals. You know, I was asking my question. Can the Transport Department answer the question about the ordinance? A lot of cows have been hit recently. So what is the current situation? I will give you some time to address that. Mr. Edward Lau. Thank you. I've been following up on the issue of animals on public transport. Right now, according to the Hong Kong Railways bylaws and the public buses ordinance, animals are expressly prohibited on MTR and franchise buses. Is this a restraint imposed by the government, or are they imposed by the public transport operators themselves? Ms. Chang? Thank you. For franchise buses, and in 230A 10 bracket C, with the exception of guide dogs, no other animals are allowed on franchise buses. I'd like to know whether this was imposed by the government. If bus operators were willing, can you remove this term? Can you relax the requirement? I think all operators and drivers have to comply with the law. So is the restriction imposed by the government? If I successfully lobby bus operators to allow pets, are you going to amend the ordinance? This involves legislative amendments. Is this possible? I think she has given you an answer. So long as the laws are amended, this is possible. If this is the case, that would be great. I've been working with bus operators, and I will report my work, and I might also meet the animal NGOs. I received a letter from the bus company due to constraints of the current ordinance. They are willing to allow passengers to bring certain animals, including dogs of reasonable sizes, to alight the buses. They have to maintain communication with the Transport Department. So the operator told me that they are happy to meet myself as well as animal NGOs. So the ball is in your side of the court. If you are willing to relax the rules, then we are likely to achieve success. Are you willing to do so? Ms. Chang might not be able to address your question, but can you give us a written response after the meeting? For pilot schemes, they must take place within the boundary of the laws. Well, if the laws are so strict, does it mean nothing? There's nothing we can do. And I'm happy to invite animal NGOs to meet with the bus operator. Mr. Lau's office is on the 6th floor, so you can visit him. Mr. Jeremy Tam, followed by Mr. Roy Kwong, Mr. Van Chan, Mr. Jeremy Tam. Thank you. The government said they would not talk about cows anymore because they have been covered. And well, we have talked about cats and dogs in the past, so does it mean there's no need to discuss them in the future? A lot of legislators received letters on the situation of cows in Chongqing. And a lot of letters were written to the government, and they look for a positive response. Are you going to meet them or even visit Chongqing together? Just having legislators visit the area is not enough. I am going to move a motion today on the feasibility of an animal compartment on the MTR. The MTR Corporation has implemented this measure in some other countries. I'm not asking you to fully open up all the compartments during the peak hours. The compartments are quite crowded. But during non-peak hours and on Saturdays and Sundays, would you allow them to do so? I'm not saying that you have to do it. I'm just asking you to study it. If you don't even want to study it, I don't think what we can do, if we do not try anything. This is not even an attempt. This is just a study. So will the government conduct a study or carry out a consultation? Ms. Chung, thank you very much. The MTR offered a response to LegCo, and we will relay such views to the railway companies. They might cite reasons such as congestion or the high capacity, and they said some people might be afraid of animals. These are pure speculations by the MTR. They never carried out a proper consultation. If my pet is kept within a carrier, if there's a size or weight restriction, then this is something we can try. It's not a simple yes or no. If you do not even consult, then this is not acceptable. Ms. Chang. By the time LegCo resumes in October, you can invite MTR Corporation to come here as well.
We will forward the view to the MTR CEO and have further discussions with them. Please do. Well, I know that when it comes to animal-friendly cars, Mr. Jeremy Tam has moved a motion which is similar to that of Mr. Edward Lau, so it will be a joint motion. If this motion is endorsed, I will ask you to talk to MTRCL about this motion. If they have questions, we can invite them to explain to us in the October meeting. Thank you. Next, Mr. Roy Kwong. Chairman, I believe that people came with hope, but hope's been dashed. Officials have said that, well, it's not the case that we don't want to do it, but we're restricted by the ordinance and we have difficulties. So you tell them about the problem, they keep telling you about their difficulties. We have come up with a lot of examples about how to build Hong Kong into a more animal-friendly city. Ms. Mo said that, previously when we staged the signature campaign, there were only about 2 or 3 people working. But now there are more. They don't have any allies. They work, all they have are themselves. But now they only ask for putting an animal in a carrier to take public transport because currently it's not allowed. Officials keep saying that, well, the law says no, there is nothing we can do. And they refuse to do anything to remove the barrier. Well, I have moved my first ever members' motion. I have added this, that, well, there should be a study on allowing animals to ride on public transport. You may be disappointed. I don't want to make it difficult for government officials, but I think it's down to a will. If you have the will, you will find a way. You can change the law. There are other civilized societies that have allowed animals to enter into our community instead of talking about them carrying diseases or dogs biting people. Why don't you cite examples of cruelty to animals, torturing animals, and you only refer to press reports about dogs biting people? Well, all we ask for is during non-peak hours, allow one car to let animals to travel in it. I appeal to you. Well, Wednesday or Thursday there will be a debate on protection of animal. This will be openly debated. Everything should be above board. We should show compassion. Animals don't understand us, but it doesn't matter. We do it for them. Animal rights and animal-friendly measures should be promoted in Hong Kong. Mr. Gary Chan has been fighting for protection of animals for 5 years. Well, Mr. Edward Lau has done something, and at least transport operators will have to look into it. And I think the officials cannot shift the responsibility anymore. There is a term for this subcommittee. I'm the chairman of the transport panel. I'm happy to advocate allowing animals to use public transport. So I suggest to Mr. Edward Lau to do something about the suggestion of allowing animals on buses and minibuses and trains. And this topic can be given to the transport panel for discussion. And the government should report to us as well about what they do to follow this up. During non-peak hours, I do think that buses and trains have space to accommodate the request. It's not the case that it can't be done. The government should keep an open mind. The other thing is cows. Well, on Lantau Island, a cow's been knocked down this week. In the Lantau Island Development Advisory Committee, we have put forward a topic. Cows can carry with them an electronic device. A similar device can be installed in vehicles traveling on islands, and when they are in proximity of cows, there will be an alert. Sorry, Mr. Ben Chan, who are members of the Economic Development Panel. They don't have a quorum, or? Well, the clock's running. Shall I continue or not? Please do. We can use technology like that. So will the government do something to stop cows being knocked down by cars, as we have heard from time to time. Will you do something to follow up? Who is to take the question? Ms. Joan from the Transport Department? Sorry, I don't have the information. Perhaps you can give us the information in the written form afterwards. Which department is responsible for taking this up? The AFCD, the TD, or other government departments? I hope that you will not just leave it after today. It should be followed up. With technology advancement, I have heard from friends that there is technology available, and you should do your best to protect cows so that they will not be knocked down. Mr. Wong, would you like to supplement? Well, are there no other members? I will just maybe hear from all members before I give an overall remark. You want to reply to Mr. Ben Chan, or no? I would like to give an overall reply. Perhaps I will hear from the PAS first. We will have an overall reply. Miss Elizabeth Quat. Sorry, I apologize. I have to go back into because I'm also a member of the economic development panel. Even when I was there, I have been listening to what's happening here. They're here to talk about public rental housing, public transport, and public open space. And I think we hear the same answer from officials. If we do not have comprehensive animal welfare legislation, then there won't be any improvement. Every time we ask for something, they will say there are complaints and there are objections. Well, when we ask for relaxing the restrictions to allow pets to use parks and gardens, as soon as there is consultation, we hear a lot of objections, and we hear more objection than support. So the issue remains. Members of the public don't come into contact with nature enough. Some children will kill insects as soon as they see one. It's because they have lost contact with nature. This is about fostering a culture to protect animals. We are stuck. Even with consultation, I'm afraid this issue will not be resolved. I have submitted amendment to this Wednesday's members' motion. I hope there will be a good animal-friendly policy. The government should also enhance public education, support various bodies to do more, so that more people are willing to learn about nature and to love animals. Mr. Lau is good enough to do something. Well, if is an across-the-board relaxation, perhaps it may not work, but if it is non-peak hours and for some operators, I think that will be good. It will be at least a step forward. This ends, and this is supposed to end at 12:45. I will exercise my power as chairman to extend it by 15 minutes. Ms. Mo would like to speak for the second time. Who else would like to speak for the second time? Yes. There's no time. I'll give you 1 minute. I would like to ask Mr. Bill Wong, how can you say that the cows in Chongqing are happy? Have you been there to look at them? They are skinny. They are skinny. They are so skinny that you can see their ribs. There is no grass for them to graze. You may see from a distance that it's green, but it's not for them to eat. They have to go somewhere else just to look for something to eat. How can you say that they are happy? Miss Ho? Perhaps I was speaking too quickly. The cows and oxen don't graze near the roadside, but they do graze near the entrance to the village. Perhaps there can be some fences erected so that they won't be scared by dogs. Mr. Lam, I want to say that the community is to be shared. It's not to be hogged by human beings. Well, if you want to do something, you'll find a way. If you don't want to do it, you'll find an excuse. If there is a will, there is a way. Last two. Half a minute. Mr. Tran Wai Wai, Ms. Ho Pui Han, Fiona, and who else? And Lau Siu Hua and Mak Suk Cheng. Less than a minute. Mr. Tran Wai Wai. Thank you. Well, the laws related to guide dogs is derived from the 1975 ordinance, so it hasn't been updated to keep abreast with the changing times. Restaurants don't allow dogs because of hygiene reasons, but guide dogs should be allowed to enter. Government departments should amend the law to keep them up to date. Premises may not allow dogs, but at least restaurants owners should be aware that guide dogs are an exception.
And restaurants do not have such signs. So we hope the government can put their attention on that. Ms. Chen, members talked about implants which can avoid injuries, because whatever the government does, it would be invasive on the cows, and the risks are also very high. More than 10 years ago, when they decided to carry out contraception on the brown cows, the mortality was 30%. If you are going to give them shots or tranquilizers, then it's very dangerous for them.
commitment, it's very important, but also to remove the legislative barriers that can present some hurdles, for instance, in the parks with regards to the trap, neuter and return programs for cats and also for the transport. The SPCA will be very happy to be involved in any discussions about access to public housing, transport, etc. And I think if you're talking about issues in terms of peak hours, Transport for London allow dogs and other animals on buses and the underground, and I don't believe there's any restrictions in terms of carriages all time. So that might be a model to look at.
Thank you. 好，跟住落嚟係何佩涵。
其實咧，呢一個調遷政策咧，喺2012
Ms. Ho Pui Han, in 2012, in 2012, you executed the relocation policy, and when the with the kettles in Lantau, you proved the exercise to be a failure with all the injuries and deaths. But you never carried out any consultation. How did you carry out the consultancy study? We did not know about the companies and people involved at all. So everything took place behind closed doors, and there was no policy consultation at LegCo. But your policy decided the fate of the 2,000 remaining cows in Hong Kong. This is unfair. We are a civilized society. Why can't some groups and individuals who are concerned about these cows even ask questions? You said the cows were healthy, despite the contrary, according to our information. The experts have looked at the situation of cows in Chongqing. Are you still not going to amend your policy? Even if we have a healthy policy in place, you would not try to implement it. If I tell you that we have no policy on community cows, and that's that led to their downfall. Ms. Mak Shok Ching. Having heard what all of you said, I'm very disappointed that the officials are only thinking about the people. So by the same logic, should we kill all animals in Hong Kong? I think you would be happier. That's my impression. If this is your mentality, there's no need to meet again ever, because they've been telling us the same thing over and over, and they're insisting that dogs will not be allowed in public housing, and no animals would be permitted on public transport, and parks would not even be partially open to pets. So this is all trash. I think the officials are the main stumbling block in preventing Hong Kong from becoming a pet-friendly city. We will never improve. Hong Kong will never improve. The officials are never will always be here, but we can continue to give our views. From the government, please. Mr. Bill Wong. Thank you. Various views have been offered on public housing or pet-friendly measures on public transport. The relevant departments would follow on them. Our policy objective is to achieve harmony between humans and animals, and to achieve that, we have to balance the views of the public and animal welfare. We cannot be biased towards either of these. So this is an important principle. As I said right from the start, the focus of the meeting are animal-friendly measures, including public rental, housing, public transport, and public open space. That's why cows are not a focus. I offered a brief response. In the past, the AFCD received reports from Sai Kung residents due to nuisance from cows. Very often after we received these reports, we follow up on the cases, including cows scavenger for food at the trash bins, which led to hygiene issues. And we installed barriers to reinforce the bins. And so this is something we did already. In the past, for cows outside the Sai Kung Country Park, they are often found straying at the roads, which led to traffic incidents. So this is another area of focus for us. From 2013 to 16, at Sai Kung, outside of Sai Kung Country Park, for example, at Sai Cha Road and Tai Wong Chai Road, for cow-related traffic incidents, 80% of the cows would die. To protect cows and road users, we carried out the trap neuter release, which would and the cows would be released at the Sai Kung Country Park. We carried out relocation. We swapped the locations of cows in Sai Kung and Lantau Island, and they would be relocated to Chong Heng at Sai Kung Country Park. As I explained, our veterinary staff would monitor the health of cows in Chong Heng and Sai Kung Country Park, and the cows are found to be in good health. And it's normal that they are thinner than domesticated cows. So the cows in the cows in farms might be fatter, and this is normal. It just reflects the different habitats of the cows. But the cows have been healthy according to our vets. That's why we had this relocation plan. Apart from the reports received by AFCD, they would carry out inspections at certain black spots for cattle. If they feel that there are risks to the traffic, the cows would be relocated. So not all cows would be affected. So that is the situation with the cows. In terms of application of technology, suggested by Mr. Ben Chan, I think the Transport Department will try to prevent accidents. Deputations also talked about the dogs in restaurants. According to CAP 132X, the food industry regulations, no animals are allowed in restaurants, with the exception of guide dogs and service dogs such as police dogs. The deputation should understand that the regulation serves to protect the public. So we are just complying with the laws. That's it. Thank you. Housing Department or Transport Department? If not, let's proceed to the two motions. I just realized that some members are very dissatisfied at the LCSC's absence. If everyone agrees, I will write to the LCSC as chairman of the subcommittee to voice our dissatisfaction. So we are dealing with two motions here. First of all, the first motion moved by Mr. Jeremy Tam and Mr. Edward Lau. Can Jeremy Tam please read out the motion? Thank you. This is my motion and seconded by Mr. Edward Lau. This is not a joint motion. The subcommittee request the government to urge the railway companies to study the feasibility of setting up animal-friendly compartments, and from the experience of its overseas wholly owned subsidiary on the Stockholm Metro, they should submit a report to the subcommittee within half a year and perform territory-wide consultation on the opening up of animal-friendly compartments and report the results to the subcommittee. Any objections to this motion? Abstentions? If not, the motion is unanimously passed. The second motion, moved by Ms. Claudia Mo and Mr. Chan. Can Claudia Mo read it out, please? This is a joint motion moved by myself and Mr. Chan. The subcommittee urges the new term government to study relaxation to the keeping of dogs at public rental housing in order to avoid abandonments of dogs due to new tenants. Any objections? Abstentions? If not, the motion is unanimously passed. Any other business? The date of the next meeting, it will take place in the new term in November. I'd like to thank the government, including the FHB, Transport Department and Housing Department, for being here. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the deputations as well, especially our animal friend Toffee. Well, he stayed very, very still over the last 2 years, so I do believe dogs are humankind's best friends. Thank you.